Alrighty, I'm just going to give it the obligatory few seconds before I do my little introduction. Okay, right. I think we're good. So, Dark Bleatings, everybody. We are here with not an author interview per se today, but a creator interview. We've got Adharsh McCabe here, who is an audiobook narrator, voiceover artist, amongst many other things that we're going to talk about today. So, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. I love when you and I are talking because I just listen to your voice because as I've told you before, my like UK, my British is not good. I do not claim it. I haven't really spent enough time there to really capture the fullness of it. My wife's great at it, so she's really good. But so I love just listening to your voice.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love listening to yours, which is why you are here because so oh, I actually no, we can announce this because at the time that I post this, the
Okay, good.
audiobook will be out.
I would have said a lot of wrong things then in that case.
Yeah. So, um, so I am familiar with you because you are the audiobook narrator for Stephen Kozaniewski's Yes, I Am a Vampire, which is a part short story collection and part autobiography, which I think is a really interesting project in and of itself. But finding somebody that could nail the fiction, and it's short stories as well, so lots of different voices and tones
Lots.
and themes, yes. And then on top of that, you're also narrating a real person's autobiographical telling of a few years. So, how did you approach that when you first saw the project?
Fortunately for me, I am very sarcastic. And so it was not very difficult to play the Stephen Kozanowski part of the story. I was able to fall into it. And actually, you do a lot of auditions. It's rare that I do an audition piece that makes me laugh.
Mhm.
So like that was nice. It made me laugh out loud. I can relate to a lot of the things he says. He's a little younger than me, and he speaks a little bit more like my wife. So he uses slightly more elder millennial terms, I would feel, to describe things. So that part of it makes me laugh too, because it kind of sounds like the way that she talks about stuff. Um, yeah, the whole fuck right off thing, like that whole thing that is just the millennials just seized and hold on to so well. They're so good with it. I really appreciate it and Kazanowski's work, but he really made me laugh a lot, and that's fun. It's really fun. That it's hard though. It was very hard. It was really a good tackle for creative enjoyment.
Yeah, I thought you did such a great job because I know Steven,
Thank you.
so I know his sense of humor and just like sort of the general tone in which he speaks. Um, and I think it's important for people to know that you had never spoken to Steven.
No, never
You
met
had,
him. Not a day.
yeah, you had, no real idea about his personality, but apart from the audition piece that you got, and
Right.
I I knew you were the one for that project the second I heard you say the title. So I
That's
was like,
funny.
oh, he's got it. Like he gets, like, yeah, he gets it. He gets what this book is.
Yeah, and it's funny for me because when I'm reading something that is shocking, like horror should be,
Mhm.
I try and not pre-read a lot.
Mhm.
I don't. I do rehearse everything. I mean, you have to,
Mhm.
especially when you read a piece and it has nine voices in it. You're like, oh, I'm going to be rehearsing a bit of this. But and that part of it, I try and like it's a weird like it may just be the way my brain works or actors' brains work where like I can do that work and that but stay ignorant
Mhm.
of it. And then when I do the read, I can really like be involved. I get to go on the journey. I know that
Mhm.
sounds crazy, but I can put myself in the backseat of the car, do the work to get the diction, the timing right, and then come back and with something like Steve stuff, like it makes me laugh reading it. Like I just read it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like I shouldn't laugh, but it still makes me laugh. And even the shocking parts of the horror, I like to be able to try and capture those emotions when I'm reading it. So if I'm not feeling it,
Mhm.
it doesn't come through in my voice.
I really felt that your the way that you've done the book is very performative, and I do think that that is the mark of a great audiobook narrator over a good audiobook narrator because
From your lips to the goddess's ears.
um because it's a story, and if you're listening to an audiobook, like you're being told a story, so it is a lot more fun when you're being told the story by somebody who feels like they're enjoying it.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing. Like I have to say, in order to enjoy the autobiographical part of it, you have to you have to be ready to go on a dark journey.
Mhm,
Because he's bearing a soul and in a lot of it's this is a it's really rough being a creator. You
mhm,
know, like just coming up with the IP, the that spark of intellectual property, like if that was all it took, like there'd be so many great stories out there. But the truth is like putting it all together, and bit by bit, as the song goes, like that's the work of it.
mhm,
So allowing Stephen allowing us to like kind of be on that journey with him as he was putting together the background of himself and what he was going through, I
mhm,
thought was kind of interesting. At first, I thought, like most people who I love to read. So for most people who've read a lot, I do read prefaces, I
mhm,
do read prologues, I read epilogues.
mhm.
I also am a madman. I read tables of contents. I
Yes.
even read copyright pages. Like I also write. So like I have to format all that stuff for myself. So
Mhm,
like I'm intimate to that. But even before I had to do that, like I am that strange little, autistic person who's like, I'm gonna read every word of this book. I'm gonna inhale the entire thing.
mhm.
So for that reason alone, it was really fun to just to settle down with this story in particular.
Yeah, right. Because all of the sections, like, because you've narrated the entire book, including the copyright page and the
Yeah.
dedication. I thought you did a pretty good job with as well. Um,
Ah, the dedication. I've never done the praise for part.
yeah, yeah. Um,
That was fun.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it just I had such a good time listening to you, and I was wondering. I know we got to speak a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but for everyone else at home, do you want to tell people a little bit about your background before you got into
Sure.
audiobook narration?
I absolutely will. But before I do that, and I would like to say that production meeting we had was the best production meeting I've had in 5 years.
Oh, great! That's
Yeah,
lovely to
it
hear.
was really like exactly what's supposed to happen.
Mhm,
All the adults show up and they all like are open and they work together and they go away with jobs and they do their jobs. I was like, wow, this is so fun. It's so nice to be in a production meeting where everything's working. So I just wanted to say that. So for me, I have a very odd background. I was born in DC in 1969 and to a father who's an architect and a mother who is a doctor. And so and they in a Romeo and Juliet-esque way. My mother was Jewish, my father was Irish Catholic. They said to everyone who was just like, you can't get married, you can go screw yourself. We're going to become yogis. So I was raised in ashrams and like yoga centers and all of that from zero. My mother has been a practitioner of yoga since I was a child. Both my parents were, and so that in itself lends to a very odd childhood. Um, I've always been an actor since I was a small child. My grandfather is a big band leader and a singer and had gold records in the 1930s. And when I was 4 years old, he would just bring me up on stage and say, "Hey, why don't you sing to everybody?" And I would just sing. I have a pathological lack of fear. So I don't get stage fright. I'm very comfortable on stage. It's like to me, it's just like might as well be my couch in my living room. So I have found by going to executive trainings that most people, public speaking is actually the most terrifying thing to the average person.
mhm,
So I have like that part's missing from my from my psyche for some reason. The other what reason I say that is when I was 12, I met a guy who had a baby tiger. And the reason why he had a baby tiger was he was a doctor, a human doctor, who was asked by Exxon to give a talk about, and this was like pre Save the Rainforest, the early 80s, give a talk about for Exxon about how the whole world is affected by everything that we do. And when he was going to just give that speech to the whole executive board, because Exxon was trying to really just figure out how to do some sort of a good push forward into the world. Great thing. One of his patients had a zoo. And his patient said, "Oh, you're going to Exxon?" While he was treating on him, "I just had some baby tigers born. You should take one to the Exxon meeting." And I knew him as a local hippie doctor, so and he was as part of Yogaville, the community yoga community we were in. So he said, "I'm going to take this tiger to this place, Konania, and address the board of directors of Exxon. You want to come just handle the tiger for me?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, it. First of all, the first time I ever touched a tiger, it just completely blew my mind. It completely like having that contact changed the way I completely think about the natural world and endangered species. And it was 35 years of my life after that. So I went and did that, and that became what eventually most people know as Doc Antle's Myrtle Beach Safari, which is one third of the story of Tiger King.
I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening will be familiar with that.
Right. So
Hmm.
Doc Antle, was the one who appeared to kind of like make sense in Tiger King and had a thing going, and the other people were just like completely spiraling out of control. And then there was a whole thing about Doc himself and this whole bunch of craziness, which I will not go into because it just my wife and I, who is Doc's oldest daughter, after 35 years of raising endangered species, doing programs, and building zoos all over the world, she came to me one day and she said, "I've got to get out. You can stay here, but I'm out." And I said, "Okay, I'm out too." And so we just ejected ourselves from the whole endangered species, save the planet animal world, mostly because of when I was a child, I went to the National Zoo as a it was my mom's fault. She'd put me on the back of her bicycle, take me to the National Zoo, and she would time it right so we would eat when the apes were all moved from one place to another place to eat their breakfast. So that was like breakfast 5 days a week. So I had this whole childhood of being around animals, and it just transformed into we started I apprenticed myself I went out of gifted and talented into this crazy program that was a behavioral program that Doc was in charge of, Doc Antle. And so I studied behavioral sciences and primal behavior, literally raising lions and tigers, studying them in ways that have never been studied before, attempting to do as much work outside the cage as possible, because when you study something in a cage, you're studying that thing's reaction to being in a cage,
Yeah.
right? And the thing that's so hard to really get through to most people is why would you study them? Why wouldn't you just turn everything loose and put it back into the wild? Because obviously that's the correct place for everything, right? No argument. Like the wild should be in the wild. Problem is there's no wild anymore.
Mm.
All the places that we think of as the wild, um, they don't really exist. Tigers are almost completely extinct in the wild. Leopards, jaguars, cheetahs, all of these cats, these spotted and striped cats, all over the world, they're all in the endangered species list. And they're, unfortunately, after doing this for 35 years, it's so painful to say, we've just spiraled downward in my lifetime.
Mm.
And so that in itself is a very very painful part to not to raise all those friends and just watch that happen over the course of that long of time. Also, when I was a child, every city that was a city, like you had a couple of things on the map. You had a library, you had a museum, you had a zoo, you had a park, you had all these things, and that was like a certain size city, right? Today, maybe at least more than half of people think, but maybe there shouldn't be zoos, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
so I had no desire to be in an industry where I had to fight, you know, to go to work to do good work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that after enough years, like it really took its toll on a lot of us in the industry, and unfortunately, a lot of us bowed out of it. And there really there's we haven't done anything good. Here's the problem: we haven't fixed the problems. Like all the reasons why all those animals are going extinct is because of habitat destruction.
Hmm.
It's us, that's it. So it's a really rough. Everyone who's still involved in that, like they have nothing but my passion for their passion, and I support it every way I can. But that was my life for decades and decades. I stood on stage 30,000 times, from Universal Studios to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and so many places in between, just showcasing animals in their beauty. And then because of a lot of that kind of pressure and because of CGI, I shot every animal movie you've ever seen that had animals in it, previous to Life of Pi.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
Life of Pi was the first fully digital wild animal movie. Before that, even Jungle Books before that, it was just Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, Ace
Oh,
Ventura 2, like,
I didn't know that.
those movies.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't
those.
know that was the first fully animated. Yeah. Wow, I didn't know that.
And that in its own way signaled the death of bringing lions and tigers and elephants and
Mm.
giraffes in a mobile zoo onto location,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is previously, since the beginning of film, that's how it was always done. So I worked very hard. I was very lucky, like anyone who gets to the very top of their profession. And then I kind of watched my profession just dissolve, in a lot of ways. And I didn't like a lot of the people in the animal profession, and my wife didn't either. Not particularly in our group, but other groups, like they mentioned in Tiger King, like those people are mad as hatters. Anyone who has their own private zoo is out of their effing mind. It is a money pit like the black hole that spirals our galaxy. It
Mm.
is just like an elephant consumes 1,000 pounds of food a day
1,000
and
pounds.
excretes 1,000 pounds a day. So not
Wow.
only do you have to feed them that much and that much water, but then you also have to, clean up after them constantly. So
Mm.
like just one elephant alone is like the entire enterprise of at least one, maybe two people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's epic. It's epic. So that's what I did for a lot of my life. That's where a lot of my theatrical and production, and we were a one house production team, shooting and recording and editing and doing all of that kind of stuff, from our own commercials to working on sets all over the world. And then my wife, COVID hit.
Hmm.
My wife is an aerialist. She spins in the air through silks and stuff, and she does that. She got really injured, and we had to kind of figure out how can we live mobily? How can we live that way? And that's what led me to doing audiobooks. Um, ACX actually has a really nice setup for it. You do have to. It takes a lot of work to get the chops at doing it, of course. But the truth is, lots of people have very interesting voices. And even if you haven't been, I've been on stage for 30,000 years. If you're not that person and you just have a cool voice, or people like your voice. My wife has a great voice. She sounds like Minnie Mouse sometimes, and she hates it. But for audiobooks, that's a whole genres that I don't do children's books, let's scare the hell out of children, so it is actually a kind of a nice adjunct to being able to move in and work that way, and kind of find your own way in that process. But yeah, so that's the long and the short of it. 35 years of being a pro in film and television, mostly doing animals, and now, like you guys, I am an author who is I'm just spent a lot of time in the last 4 or 5 years studying script writing, and both in college and in other courses, really going back into all the scripts that I had written in the last 20 years
Hmm.
and going, oh. as we do when we look at our infantile stuff and saying, okay, let's just Joseph Campbell the heck out of this script.
Yeah.
Let's take a Sid Pressfield attack to this script. Let's take really good scripting ideas and just basic models and let's see what's missing. And it was a wonderful journey. My stories became so much more alive through me just getting better,
Yeah.
and that's been quite a journey for me too.
Yeah, it's I want to go back to two things you said, but I studied script writing, and when I started studying script writing is when I started having short stories published because they're transferable skills, but it really taught me a lot about storytelling and structure and what's not interesting because I waffle a lot, so I like so so yeah, I want to talk about your writing, but I just wanted to go back quickly to the performance element of what you do now. So I knew that you had a performance background from listening to how you narrated the audiobooks. I was like, that guy has got to have done some kind of live performance. Because you captured all the characters and everything so well.
Thank you. I also have three, they're all adults now, but I have three demanding children, and a regular story time just didn't cut it.
Right,
So
okay.
I have to be honest, that's a lot of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Um, how would so yeah, so your entire background really, it's so funny because when you started talking about working with animals, I was thinking, how does this work into performance? But it's very intertwined, your particular job and set of skills and everything you've done. Um, how would you say that performing sort of like on in your own sort of professional context and doing if you're doing stuff that's informative, say, about animals and things like that, how does that differ from having to inhabit somebody else's story?
It's well, okay, it's massively different and just the same
Hmm.
in its own way. Fortunately for me, I've been a stage actor since I was a child, so
Hmm.
not being yourself. When I was 14, I was Prince John in like The Lion in Winter, I think it was, and he's the Prince John that everyone hates in Robin Hood, right?
Hmm.
So I'm
Hmm.
playing him as a teenager, and he's a complete shit. And I after I'd been reading the role for like 2 weeks, my mom said to me, "I don't understand how you even have any friends if that's how you talk on the phone to them." And I was like, that's weird because A, it was so long ago, there was one phone in the house and it was in the kitchen where she was. And
Hmm.
B, I, I said, I was reading my line. She's like, oh, she said, you have been intolerable for the last couple of weeks. I didn't know what was going on with you. So like falling deep into a role
Yeah,
has
you
bit
went method.
a danger for me, right? From an early age. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be this jerk now. So like that in itself, it is not so hard and it's very fun. The other side of that is when you're on stage and you are doing a live show and it's
Mhm.
all factual, like I'm saying, here's the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life. And someone brings out a tiger cub and shows it to the audience. The whole audience goes,
Yeah.
oh, like it's a programmed button, right? In that moment, I am speaking factually, but I'm also kind of playing a character.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like I don't walk around and talk like this all day long. That would be ridiculous, right? So even then, because I'm playing to a live audience and I'm there, it's 2,000 people, so like
Yeah.
there's a lot of them. You have to play big to read that big. That you're still playing a character. So it's not me who you're actually talking to the real me at this moment in time.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I relate to that. I used to work as a children's entertainer at a family holiday park, and they were singers and dancers. I am not a good singer, so I was not on the show like there's like the show team that does like the more production type stuff. Um, I did
Are
dancing.
you a good dancer?
I'm not the wor I was passable to be in those kinds of shows, but I wouldn't call myself a dancer really, no. But my skill set there was hosting and creating like party time kind of events and games and things like that for the kids. And my personality on stage, it was very much me, but it was a tailored version of me, if that like so my obviously absolutely no swearing, no sort of above a sort of 9-year-old comprehension of a joke kind of stuff, you know. And I absolutely loved it, but I'd feel very mentally exhausted afterwards. So like it's weird
Yeah.
to be yourself, but also it's a much more extroverted version of myself really because I'm not that extroverted in real life. But it comes out of you when you're performing. So
I'm a bad dancer.
mhm.
I know how to dance. I've taken a lot of dance training in my life. It still looks like you asked an orangutan to do it. So singing I can do, but I can't dance. Yeah, I agree with you. There's a big energy output,
Yeah.
and that most people don't understand that you're on.
Hmm.
And when you are not talking to, but talking with the audience,
Hmm.
and you're emotionally connected, and you're having a conversation with the whole audience,
Hmm.
you get all that energy back.
Yeah.
But if you're just outpouring it and they're just like, whoa, this is wow, this is overwhelming a lot, which is, that's a way a lot of, that stage performance can be. You don't expect people on Broadway to be like, well, Bob, what do you think about this? So like, but you can get away with that in a live stage show. So there's a lot of energy output. And if you're an actor, it's what you love. It's what you crave more than anything else on earth. It's like, you can't
Yeah,
get it anywhere else.
it's yeah, well this is brings me to something else I want to ask you about when you because I've never narrated an audiobook. And I don't mind telling everybody this. I did say to you in an earlier email today, when I hit the point of needing an audiobook narrator, you're my guy. I
Thank you so much for that.
I
That's I'm
has
honored by that.
it has to be you. I love the work that you did that I've heard. Um, so I noticed that when I used to perform at that park, I found it a lot easier to perform to a crowd of 1 to 2,000 people than in the off season when we'd maybe have about 20 people because the energy level, as you said, it's it feels like all of a sudden time starts slowing down when you can see the faces of every single person watching you, and you're like, oh God. And I was
Dude, I have done hundreds of shows for three people
yeah,
in a
it's different.
giant stadium. Because it's pay or play. Like if there's one person there, 10 people there. Central Florida, we stopped for hurricanes at Universal Studios. That's it. We had
Yeah,
lightning strikes all around our stadium, open stadium during shows. The rain coming through so hard sideways
yeah.
that I can't even really see the audience. And all you can really do is bring out a really confident dog onto stage because nothing else can handle being in a tropical storm. So yeah, there's moments where, but even if it's even if it's just three people and the setup is great, there's a level of intimacy where
Yeah.
you have to be instead of like here I am back on the stage, you've got to be like, hey, why don't you three people sit together and I'm going to show you something mind blowing. No one ever gets to see this show.
Mhm.
This is going to be a show that and then you bring out half as many animals. Everyone backstage gets to work half as hard. Half the animals don't work, and you just
Yeah.
bring them out, and you just like this is the most amazing thing about this creature. Those people get an amazing time,
Hmm.
and you change the show.
Yeah.
And then your energy level changes because you're just having a conversation with a couple of people. You're not trying to, oh, I'm having a conversation with 2,000 people, sort of thing. Even mic'd up. That this is still, it's a
Yeah.
lot of energy to commit to get them so they're not leaving, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the energy required for all different types of performances. Like it's hard to I think that people who've never performed on a stage, it would be very hard to explain to somebody the like the emotional process you go through and like hyping yourself up and with so and you've done stuff on so many different scales like audiobooks feel by comparison like not small in a bad way but just you're just performing to yourself in that moment so how do you
Yeah.
keep your energy up like do you how long do you record at a time typically?
Yeah, I limit myself to an hour.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then, I'll go back, I'll do editing. What most people don't know about these books is the recording time is, if you're really good, it's 25% of the time.
Hmm.
If you're not really good, it's like 5% of the time. The production time, it gets exponentially bigger. If your equipment doesn't get rid of most of the plosives and the pops and
Hmm.
the little gobble stops, those
Hmm.
little noises that our mouths actually just naturally make. Um, and if your background environment isn't, like negative 60 decibels is the sweet spot, you
Hmm.
know, um, so that your room tone, so your equipment, and then also, there's all these kind of things. Like you got to be super well hydrated before you start. That
Hmm.
changes all the sounds you make with your lips, and like, there's all these like, professional me, maybe, like there's professional tricks and tips to making sure that your tongue sits in the right place and blah 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 blah. But at the end of the day, you you I can only record as much as I can produce in the
Hmm.
same section. So usually I'll record for an hour and then I'll spend, if I'm really on it like a bonnet, 2 hours
Hmm.
producing that hour, but sometimes four.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was wondering about that because I make YouTube videos and they're not very high production. I usually just sit there talking about books, and even in the and I've been doing that for about 2 years now, and I feel quite comfortable doing it now. But it still takes me longer to edit a video than record it because of the number of times you don't realize like you stop being like, and I realized how often I say certain words to, and when you start watching yourself, I'm like, well, that's annoying. Those have to go. So you start sort of like cutting them out, and I just did it then, sort of like that's my go-to
Yeah,
phrase.
you have to start to edit that stuff out of your brain
Hmm.
for those working moments. And it's hard because, again, like you just said, like you're not being you then.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you don't want to lose that genuineness to it, you coming through in the
Yeah.
production. But it's very different. I like doing it. It is a far less of an energy output.
Hmm.
To just be, it's basically the same as this. Like I have an imaginary person that I'm talking to who's the director, and a part of my brain is listening, as I'm recording. I try and catch all, I try and, like, the minute I have it, I do a double snap that gives me a visual when I go back and when I'm going back and doing my production and I'm looking at my sound waves, that double snap is enough. And I'm like, okay, that's one take, that's two takes, that's three takes, that's four takes.
Hmm.
And I can see there's like ways that you can make it way easier for yourself. Um, and when you're doing commercial stuff, like if I was just doing a how-to book,
Hmm.
there's no voices.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
almost no outtakes
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I've rehearsed it. Like I can give a good strong read, and it's a 45-minute read. It might take me 50 minutes, including outtakes. You know,
Yeah.
but something like, so I think I just lost the name of this book because I'm so into it. Yes, I am a vampire. So like, yes, I am a vampire. There's so many outtakes
Hmm.
because I voices. Fortunately, my wife is also a brilliant audio engineer, and she will, better than I am, and she will listen to my stuff. There's a part in the Brain Eater Jones piece that's the prequel piece, and I was seeing the word Subijaya, and it's supposed to be Subibaha,
Hmm.
and I was seeing it as Subibaja. Like I was
Yeah.
trying to wrap my brain because, like, I went into that and I was like, oh, you don't until you're rehearsing, you don't even know that this character has an accent. And you get like
Yeah.
three lines into the character, you're like, oh, this is a Spanish character. Okay, I got it.
Hmm.
Now I'll start over again. Okay, it starts to make more sense. Yeah, my wife said, she's like, it's Subi Baja. And he's trying to say the word seesaw and match it
Yeah.
to a word that he knows. I was way off. So that is a very rare moment where I go back in the studio, recut the whole line the next
Hmm.
day. Generally, I catch that kind of stuff on my first cut, being my own director, and I'm able to get through it that way.
Yeah.
And
It's
I'm really losing my mind. She will jump in and help me finish producing an audiobook because she loves me.
Oh, well, that's very nice and also very useful.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, to have somebody in your household that's well versed in that side of things, that's
Yeah.
very helpful. This is
Yeah.
why I run to my husband for every single thing about my laptop, my printer, because he works in IT, and so usually the answer is try turning it off and on again, and that generally does fix the thing. But
It does. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm very grateful for him because I've had absolute meltdowns at my keyboard a few times. Like, why won't the thing do the thing? He's like, okay,
Congratulations on getting Zoom to work correctly for this.
thank you. Yes, I've people who are regular watchers of this Sunday video will know that I have until recently been very faithful to Skype, and I was probably the last person on the planet still using it. And I've had to swap now, so I'm just getting to grips with Zoom, which everyone has been telling me to use instead for years. But you know, I'm a creature of habit.
I teach different types of yoga classes
Mhm.
online, and I can say that launching any kind of Zoom thing and getting it to work correctly with
Mhm.
lots of it people, it's good. Once you get it down, it's good. It's good. But man, I get that when you're starting it and your brain starts to melt. When you have someone you can text and be like, "What's going on?"
I
It's so much just to have that lifeboat is to grab a hold of is so nice.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a technophobe as well. It's not for my lack of trying, but I don't think my brain is very well wired to understand this kind of thing. So I do try, but I yes, I it's when something should be working and it isn't. And I obviously there's a reason if it's a computer because it's all programming. But if it's when I have a blind spot and I cannot see what the problem is, that's when I lose it a little bit. Um, can we move on to your own writing? So tell us what you write. What kind of
So
stories
I
do you
write,
enjoy telling?
sure. I write supernatural and superhero.
Hmm.
I've been writing I generally write in tandem.
Hmm.
Um, I love the, I love the unexpected
Hmm.
that occurs when you write with someone else because you have an idea and you start working with it and then they can take the story in a direction that you never saw. And if you have the capacity just to groove with that person, your story will be better.
Hmm.
It will
Hmm.
be exponentially better. If you have a structure that you guys can work with and then take all of that mishmash and actually make it come through and then brrrr, and then it's actually the
Hmm.
written word. I think that's where my joy is. And so I got the Dungeons and Dragons box set from my parents for Christmas in 1978, and I have been a lousy, rotten gamer ever since. It's just part of my ethos. Um, I was lucky enough to find some other gamers when I was very young who are also great writers.
Hmm.
And they better than me, in fact, better plot and story creators than me. And we fell into a relationship where uh, he would create my partner Dale Giddens. He would create the plot
Hmm.
and the antagonist, and I would create the protagonist.
Hmm.
And we would write it together, and any action sequences we actually role play. We have
Hmm.
the entire system so that we're role playing that, and it creates an environment where the hero isn't aware of the story.
Hmm.
So I don't read any of it.
Hmm.
He hits me with it, and it's blank, it's fresh, and my reactions in the role play are completely clean. So it enables us to create a hero who isn't doesn't know what's going on. That's the hardest part, as an author, is to create uh fear.
Hmm.
The
Yes.
audience has to first of all love the main character and be afraid for them, because if they're not attached to them and if something can't take that character away from them, well, you've done nothing. You have failed completely, and no one's gonna be hooked into that story. So I think one of the failures that I often find when I'm writing my own short story is I know what's going on, and so the lead character's actions will be a little predictable.
Hmm.
But when I'm working with someone else, I also, write with my oldest son, Connor. Um, and he and I have 23 episodes of something called Ogre Tales, which some parts of it is still up on YouTube, which is we would do live, the two of us together. We would have 2 hours. We would take four story ideas that we had to make up on the spot. We would number them, roll a four-sided dice, and that was the random story you had to tell. And we would switch back and forth storyteller and then lead character.
Hmm.
And you only had 2 hours, and you would get 5 minutes to create the entire story, the plot, and everything, and 5 minutes to create that character. And then we would go into it. And then by the end of that two hours, we would have told an entire story from beginning to end. And so, that was fun. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like that was writing where it's wild and free and crazy and like you're literally like, oh, I didn't want to do that one. I just said that because it was shoot, okay, we're doing that one. You know,
Yeah.
Princess gets captured by orcs in the middle of a siege. That was a throwaway. That's the one we rolled, So putting that much random element into the story is at the heart of storytelling for me. So that
Yeah.
there's always a what the if there aren't a lot of those moments in the story, um, I think it's a little stale, you
Hmm.
know. That's just for me. So the feature film scripts that we've written together, and for in Supernatural or for Heroes, we have a 5 year arc, 20, old school 22 a season episodic fully written out universe of superheroes we've just been kind of working on for the last 20 years. And we pitched it to Sony because I had a lot of Sony people I was working
Hmm.
with at the time, and we pitched it right at the heart of Ugly Betty.
Hmm. Hmm.
So like when women, thank goodness, started to have a presence on television, right?
Yeah.
But at that point, it was only woman dominated.
Right. Okay.
So
Gotcha.
you couldn't sell a new show unless it was female dominant, at that moment
Okay.
in time. And the guys we were working on like this script is our favorite script. If you rewrite it and make it all about women, we'll do the script. And we were like, oh, we're not rewriting an entire universe that already has 130 characters in it that we've been crafting since we were 20 years old.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. Now as a writer, I'm flexible enough and I'm like, you idiot.
Well,
You should have just changed a couple genders. How does that possibly if changing the gender of the character, because and that's me,
mhm.
then this is me in a whole new world. Like now I feel like if you gender doesn't matter as long as gender serves the function of the character.
Yeah,
If you force the gender on the character and it loses part of the function of the character, then it doesn't work. But otherwise,
I was
it
gonna
doesn't matter. Race, gender, all those kind of things, they're very malleable.
yeah, I was gonna say, but if you'd been working on this world and these characters for all this time, though, it's not just in that case, it's not just like switching the gender of your characters. Now you have to think about the perspectives of your characters and because
And
they
the
want
relationships.
exactly. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bit much. That's a bit much, I think, because your world exists. You've already done it. So,
On the other side of that, though, being an author, and I just finished taking a whole college year of, and so
mm,
sociology in particular, because I like to try and pay attention to what's going on in the world. I do see places in our script where there should be a better balance of gender ratio in characters.
mhm,
So in that way, when that script does come to television or the movies, like it will have changed
yeah.
just in the time that we've told it because our cultural zeitgeists have changed so dramatically,
Mhm.
you know.
But that's
And I
sort
don't
of
think that's good or bad. It's just what you have to flow with as an artist, I think.
but that's just sort of like natural progression in your own work and thinking, though.
Yeah.
You're so yeah, you've done so much creative work and storytelling in particular, and that's my I'm a storytelling nerd. That's kind of that's my jam. That's what I'm obsessed with, and
Yeah.
a lot of people who write, they go with that sort of Stephen King kind of thing of, write with the door closed, edit with the door open kind of thing. But um,
Mm.
and I guess all creative arts, if you start producing things, do become collaborative at some point. Like if you write a novel, at some point you'll have to get an editor and a cover designer, things like that. But it sounds like you enjoy the collaborative process like a lot earlier than a lot of people. Like you co-write and you create as you're going with other people as well.
Yeah, I think also I've been on set. I like literally the first movie that I sat on was Gardens of Stone, which I think is a Coppola.
Hmm.
I think I was like 14 or maybe no, I was 17 on that set. And I brought a bear and we did a bear scene in that, which is not it never made it into the movie. And from that moment on, I watched the progression of created by, adapted for, written by. So, like, if I read a novel and it becomes a movie, there could be five writers
Yes,
that
yeah.
go from the original to the adaptation to the screenplay, and then it's going to go and that becomes a shooting script after the director gets their hands on it. You know what I mean? So, like, if you can't be adaptable as a writer, you really can't make it to that. From an ego standpoint,
Hmm. Yeah.
you're never going to survive that process.
Well, I that's a lesson that I learned, and I'm really glad I learned it because I used to be very precious about my stuff. I'm like, this is my thing. I've created it, da, 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 da. And then I wrote this script while I was I studied theatre and media for my BA, and I wrote a script as part of my script writing course. And then while I was studying my script writing masters, somebody picked this script up and wanted to stage it. And I was very surprised because when I wrote it, it was for an assignment. And that, I mean, I still cared about it as much as if it was for anything else, but I just never thought that anyone was actually going to ever perform it. And I was asked if I wanted to co-direct, but I'm not a director. But I said no, but I would love to sit on in on rehearsals. And if it's not going to put the cast off too much that I'm there and everything, I
Mm.
would just like to see it be put on its feet. And it's funny how when you write something, you have an idea, but then the second other people get it, you realize that everyone has read it a different way. Everyone has picked up on something different, like things that you didn't even realize you'd put in there. Somebody's like, oh, well, I think this character, da, da, da. And I'm like, oh, did I write that? Or are they like, and I found that uh, so they kept asking my opinion. I was like, look, if you want to change a line, if you think of something funny, because it was a comedy, like a sitcom kind of thing. I was like, if you think of a joke, just put it in and see if it works. Like, don't, I'm not going to start hammering you guys if you change things. And the end result just ended up being a much better piece of work than what I'd originally done. So, um, yeah, I
That's
love,
a super rare relationship you had with those people.
yeah, they were great.
Generally, the writer, once you're done, unless you're an executive producer, they don't want you on set
Yeah, well,
because really, once the script has been read by the director, the director is now the artist.
hmm
Which a lot of people don't understand about directors. They technically kind of run everything. Actually, the assistant directors kind of run everything, but the director has the vision. When they read the script,
hmm
that's what you're going to see. You're going to see what they saw in their head, which
hmm
is not necessarily what the writer had in their head. So, as the writer, when you're trying to write that script that's going to be read by a director, you're desperately trying to get as much of the description that's in your head down there in a
hmm
short, cogent way that the director doesn't get overwhelmed by the verbosity of it and just can see the images. And then, like, you have a relationship with them where you kind of think the same, and then hopefully, because that point on, like, to have them say, do you want to co-direct, and to ask for your ideas once you're in production is super rare.
Well, it's because it was just like a tiny little theatre production, so it wasn't like a huge scale thing, but it was nice to feel valued
Yeah.
like after that point. And it was lovely to see it all come together because I didn't have much input once they started staging it. It was just I was just
Yeah.
there enjoying the things that they came up with as we went along. And
It is
I was
wild to watch your art come to life.
it's bizarre, isn't it? Because and to see what other people can make of it as well. And yeah, it's a fun process. What is it about creating stories and worlds that you think speaks to you so much?
I think it's just part of how I'm my own particular mental makeup.
Mhm.
Um, I think actors have a tendency to be pretty adaptable in their brain because you
Mhm.
have to be to think like these other people. You can't sound like a character unless you actually can think like that character. Like it just doesn't come through, you know. So you have to be kind of mentally adaptable that way. And I think as a writer, I'm also I like to play. Also, that lack of fear thing, right? So.
Yeah.
I've walked in and out of a million, no exaggeration, cages full of lions, tigers, and leopards, right? I have a pathological lack of fear. So in writing, I often have a pathological lack of fear, where I will do, just wild, aggressive stuff with stories because I'm not attached to losing it. You know I can hang out with my son. If I ever got to a place where I was like, oh, I've got no more ideas, I'm 55. I know for a fact this will die before I'm done telling all of the stories I've already written at this point. You know what I'm saying? So like, I have no fear of a loss of a story as I'm writing it.
Hmm.
I'm not attached to it. I love it. I just took 4 days off, and my best friend, my writing partner, he lives in Tennessee, and I live in Virginia, and we met. My wife found a campground exactly halfway, and it
Hmm.
was in the middle of the week, so nobody was there, and the temperature was great. Everything was perfect, and we camped and we sat and wrote for 4 days solid. We went back through years worth of old stuff, and we created an entirely new world of like mages in modern day, which is something we've always wanted to do to really cross those two things in its own world. Created the rules for the world, together, and then started to actually write the story together and te play test the world rules that we created to make sure they don't break under pressure. And just being able to do that as a writer is like that's bliss. So
Yeah,
those are the moments that are really great.
that sounds heavenly to me. I every now and the smallest room in my house is my office slash little home library, and it's my fit. Like I sometimes just sit around and I'm like, I'm going to have a nice little day of shutting my door and pretending that nothing else in the world exists, and it's a lovely time. Um, what is your outside of your own work? What is your favorite story? Whether it's in a book, movie, what game, whatever. Like, do you have a favorite?
I would say that my favorite story that I really would love to see come to the screen is Roger Zelazny's Amber series.
Hmm.
That is one of the great classical science fiction fantasy series of not only time traveling, but traveling through dimensions and all of that kind of stuff, but in a very medieval magical sort of world as well. So that reading that definitely shaped that's just the way that I think about that. And if you ask my wife, she would say that I've probably read it and listened to it somewhere in around 50, 60 times.
Hmm. Yeah, I would.
So and every time I go, it's 9 books, I think. Every time I go back and listen to the whole series, I find plot points that I just didn't catch,
It's the
you
mark
know?
of really good storytelling.
And I'm like, wow.
Do you know what really got me when I was a kid? Completely different reasons, but it was I brought it up on the channel before, so people listening and watching, forgive me for bringing it up again. But Return to Oz was one of the things for me. Have
Mm.
you ever seen that? Uh,
So I've read all of Bombs. As a
oh,
child, I had the whole
mhm.
all. And they're weird and wild and crazy and wonderful,
Yeah.
and the illustrations are just marvelous. Yeah,
So Return
love
to
that.
Oz, Return to Oz, the film it was for me as a kid, and also Alice in Wonderland, the book, the Disney film. Like
Oh yeah.
Alice, I'm a die-hard Alice in Wonderland fan. Like original source material kind of stuff because it's so weird. But when I was a kid, that's probably what got me into horror was Alice in Wonderland, weirdly, and
Mm.
because I don't care what anyone says, that's a horror story for
It's
me.
dark and it's meant to be, it's a political commentary on
Mhm.
oppressive society, imperial society. So like, yeah, it's light, but it's also heavy.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Return to Oz was probably just my horror gateway because I wasn't really a musical kid, and so I wasn't a huge fan of The Wizard of Oz. And then I saw Return to Oz, and I was like, wow, this feels different. Where
I
are the
am
tracks?
as big of a musical fan as you can find. So that was always that The Wiz, in fact, like blew
Mhm.
my mind from a musical point of view. It's nearly unwatchable by modern standards. I've gone back a couple of times and tried to watch it. It's hard, but just from production quality. But the music's sensational, and it really is, and that is a more of a like a modern apocalyptical version of the Wizard of
Mhm.
Oz. So I love those stories too. Yeah. Also, Ursula Le Guin, um, A Wrinkle in Time. If you're a nerdy kid like me, like just talking about things like tesseracts and mitochondria and
Mhm.
stuff, was so mind blowing. She created this whole fantasy world that incorporated the very cutting edge of theoretical science and stuff.
Mhm.
So I love all of that. Yeah, horror I enjoy a lot. I write. A lot of horror, I write a lot of vampire, werewolf, that kind of horror genre, and I really enjoy it. But I have fought real monsters.
Mhm.
I don't have that thing that
Yeah.
horror does to most people. Like I'm dead inside that way, I guess. I don't know. It goes to that crazy lack of fear that I have. So I don't have the same like I've so many of my friends are horror. They're just like
Yeah.
it's like it's their juice. And then I hang out with them and I watch it, but it's like watching. I don't play basketball,
Mhm.
but I have lots of friends who played their entire lives. And if we sit and watch a basketball game, I'm sitting like this, and they're like, their bodies, their muscle memory is literally responding to
Yeah.
what they're seeing, right? So for horror, for me, I'm looking at the production quality. I'm like, man, they really backlit that beautifully. Like, oh, that's so
Yeah.
dark. Oh, and this, oh, and that's amazing. So my brain isn't even doing the part. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love writing it.
It's so much fun. I like that. And horror, when I try to get other people into horror is where it can either go really right or really wrong for me. I went on a date once and it was a first date. And it was when the Evil Dead remake, the 2010 one came out. I was a big fan of
Nice.
the originals and I was sat next to this guy who I couldn't tell what he made of it because he was just sat there with his arms folded, sort of just glaring at the screen. I was cracking up laughing because I found it hilarious because I was seeing the humor from the originals. They went a bit darker with the remake, but they're like, oh well, the originals are known for being really over the top and da da da, so we're gonna up the ante on it. And I was
Yeah.
just crying laughing, and he was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, "Are you not finding this funny?" And he was like, "No, are you sick?" And I was like, "Oh well, I think you just don't get
Yeah. That's my wife and I. We're the ones who are laughing in the theater when no one else is laughing.
And you're like, look, if you don't understand the context of this remake and the originals, maybe it isn't funny. I don't, or maybe it isn't funny, and I'm just a little bit demented.
Demented.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know where that line is.
I've made peace with myself. It's fine. So as we wrap up, would you
Yeah,
like to recommend some of your own work that people can find? I will put links in the description for anybody who's listening and watching.
I would love to. Thank you for that. The truth is, I have been like nurturing and rewriting stuff so much that I am just now re-releasing this stuff. So
Mhm.
you will see it in the future. It's weird reinventing yourself completely in many ways. I know this is very grim, but this is a grim place to talk about it. Like all my friends are dead.
Mhm.
Like even like my favorite cinematographers to work with, all of the like they're all dead. So when I get to the point where I'm like, oh, these scripts are great, I started reaching out to all my friends. Like it's depressing.
Mm,
So at this point, agency representation, obviously every actor is always looking for that in every way and shape they do. And every writer and literary person is
mhm.
always looking for that. But really, keep tuned to, this channel. And I really enjoy working with you guys, and I think that we'll be able to get enough projects together that I'll be able to shout out to everyone when the time is right. But thank you for the
Okay,
offer. If you
great.
love yoga, please join me every Sunday for Yoga for the Real World, where I will break it down to the very bottom and take you to the very top, and we'll have a great time together.
Well, I will put the link for Yes, I Am a Vampire because that's a
Excellent.
very recent project.
Yeah, let me
Um,
give a big plug to that. Also, fantastic. Not only is it great horror that really is shocking at a lot of times, and that's why we're there, but also just the Stephen story of his publishing life to this point is a hilarious, laugh out loud, read and listen.
mhm.
If you are dark and twisted like we are, and you like laughing at other people's pain and torment. This I would pick up immediately.
Yes, I would agree. It's one of my favorite pieces of Stephen's work, and I've read everything he's done now, and this is a highlight for me. This because of the autobiographical element as well. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram. You can find me. It's adharshmccabe.com, ADHARSHMCCABE.com. The beauty of having a Sanskrit Irish name is that you can pretty much get every name you want. So you can find me at my own website. It's the easiest, but look for me on Instagram as well. And I look forward to talking to everyone who shows up.
Yeah, I'll put the links in the description, everyone, if you would like to easily find out how to read out that I will make that very easy for you. Thank you again for doing this. This was a real highlight for me because I've been trying to branch out. I love talking to authors, but there are so many different types of creators, and I love to have a bit of a different conversation sometimes. So this has been really entertaining for me and everyone watching and listening, I'm sure. So thank you so much again for joining us for this.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And I'm going to be stealing your voice little by little.
Excellent. Well, it's all yours. We go with our usual sign off because we are goats here at Happy Goat Horror is Bleat. So we're going to give a little wave. And as I awkwardly try to find the stop recording button, I'm not used to Zoom yet. All right, I found it. So Bleat.